Today is National Superhero Day, and here at Stan Lee Presents, we wanted to honor and celebrate today with a list of heroic advice from the man himself, Stan Lee. With a massively successful career, Stan has some words that can guide future creators with their superhero creations. Here are Stan Lee's top 10 tips on how to create a superhero. Let's get started. Number 10, read all you can.
Read all you can. Read everything you can. Don't just read one type of story. Read every type of story. Learn to recognize the difference of different writers' styles. Why do you find this writer interesting? Why did this writer bore you? The boring writer, figure out why he bored you so you never do that kind of writing again, and so forth.
While you might already be a fan of certain books and authors, it's important to expand your literary horizons and further learn more about the world of writing, and even more about yourself. By reading everything, good or bad, new or old, familiar or foreign, you allow yourself to recognize things you may have not realized before, and reinforce your ideas of what you want to write. This can also help with our next Stan Lee tip. Number 9, try to surprise people.
I like things that are different. If you do what everybody expects, you're just doing the ordinary. But if you surprise people, that's fun.
People find comfort in the familiar, but that familiar may start to become boring and expected, so it's nice to throw curveballs to shake up the status quo. But don't do it for the sake of doing it. It might be best to combine this idea with our next tip. Tip number 8, do something you're interested in.
But if you do what you really want to do, you feel like you're playing. It's easier for you to do. I think you have to do what you do best and what you enjoy, and then you have a better chance.
Whenever you're doing something you genuinely enjoy doing, you emit a different energy while doing it, and it shows. There's authenticity in your work. But what's even more important is, tip number 7, write to please yourself.
I have always written to please myself, not to please a certain type of audience, because you can't know the audience as well as you know yourself. And if I write a story that I'm enjoying while I'm writing it, and I can't wait to see what happens next, then I'm hoping that a large proportion of the public will feel the same way, and they'll enjoy it too.
The audience isn't dumb, and can tell when you're trying too hard to please them. When you're writing to please yourself, there's a genuineness to the work you create, and the audience is able to feel that, and it may naturally make them enjoy your work as much as you enjoy creating it. Tip number 6, don't be afraid to switch things up and try new things.
I bet it would be fun to try to get a character who's kind of a monster, but he's really good. But just because he looks and acts like a monster, people hate him, fear him, hunt him, and try to destroy him. Okay, now that sounds kind of silly. So how do you make it realistic? How do you combine reality with fantasy?
There's always fear in doing something new. It's strange and unfamiliar, and you don't really know how people are going to react. However, sometimes you just gotta push forward and try it. If you need a jumping off point, maybe ask a few people to help out, like with our next tip, tip number 5. Collaboration is important.
The artist and I would talk over the story. I would tell him or her what I wanted the story to be. Generally, this is who the villain is, this is what the problem is, this is how they'll resolve it, and these are a couple of little scenes I'd like you to put in definitely. Now, beyond that, I'd say to the artist, now you go on and draw it any way you want, and if you can improve it or think of new things, go ahead. Very often, the artist would bring my story back and would have changed it so much I could hardly recognize it. The artist might have added new characters, new incidents, anything. I loved when that happened because it made it more interesting for me. I had to figure out how to write all these new elements and kept my interest up.
When you find yourself stuck in a rut or in need of some inspiration, having a collaborator is nice because it allows you to bounce ideas back and forth. You can discuss some ideas you were unsure of, and they can potentially give you new ideas to keep things fresh. But regardless, you always have to remember the next tip. Number 4, it all comes down to story. Write the story you want to tell.
I may have written some stories that were grittier than others. That's how I felt at the moment. I may have written some that were more simplistic or more cheerful. You write according to the way you feel at the time and to the story you want to tell at the time. To tell a story, there'll always be new ways to animate a story or do a movie. But it still all gets down to how good is the story and how much will people be interested in the story. It doesn't matter what you use to tell the story. The story is everything.
Nobody knows the story more than yourself, and you shouldn't force yourself to tell a story you don't want to tell. Like his previous tip said, write a story to please yourself, but more so, write the story you want to tell the way you want to tell it. And regardless of how you present it, the people and fans will come. Additionally, there's also tip number 3. Make the characters interesting and relatable with real-world problems.
Each story has to have an element of something new and something unexpected, And our formula basically is to mix fantasy with realism. In other words, we'll take a character who's got superhuman power. Let's say he can fly through the air, or like Spider-Man, he can climb on walls. We take him and we say, suppose there were such a character and he really existed in the real world. What problems would he have? So we take these bigger-than-life characters and we give them very lifelike qualities and problems.
To me, the ideal hero is a guy that you feel could exist in real life, and a guy that if he or she did exist in real life, you would like to know them or be friends with them.
Even the most fantastical of stories need something to ground it to reality so that people can empathize and relate to the characters in the story. In addition to that, there's another important element that Stan believed in, and that's tip number 2. Remember the heroes and villains.
You want the good guy to be the one that the reader would want to emulate, not the villain. Although the villain should be very colorful and in a way charismatic, but the stories have to be told so that the reader would want to empathize with the hero.
The heroes and villains are both sides of the same story, but like Stan said, ultimately you want the people to empathize with the hero. Tip number 1 is believe in yourself.
If you have an idea that you genuinely think is good, don't let some idiot talk you out of it.
It's important to remember that ultimately you have control of what you do. And you shouldn't let someone talk you down just because they don't believe in your ideas. I mean, trust me, I wouldn't be doing voiceover for this channel or the other channels if someone told me not to try it out. You know yourself better than anyone. Believe in yourself and believe in your ideas. And with that, we have our list of some of Stan Lee's tips on how to create a superhero. Do you have a favorite tip? Which hero do you take inspiration from? Who is your favorite hero that Stan Lee's created? Comment below, let us know. Be sure to like, subscribe, and don't forget to hit that notification bell to be notified about our next upload. That's all, and remember, Excelsior!